say somebody comes to you and says, I love my job, I love the people I work with, I'm even happy with what I'm being paid, but I can't stand my manager. Now, has anybody been in that situation on one side? Yeah, most of you, it seems. What normally happens as a result? They leave. Yeah? How many people here, hands up, if you've left an organization because of your manager? Okay, that's well over half. People join companies, and all too often, they leave managers. Now, at Happy, it takes a very short time to resolve. We simply ask, who would you like instead? Because our core principle is they should let people choose their manager. Yeah? Simple. Do you know that according to a UK workplace survey, 48% of the working population in our country would take a pay cut to be able to change their manager? That's how bad things are, right? So how does it work in practice? Let's take Happy as an example. We're a training business, so our biggest department is training. And the first thing you have to do that we've done is separate strategy from people management. So I'm feeling a bit traditional here because I know there's some people here that don't have management at all. But if you have management, we have, say, a head of training. They're elected by the training department, and they get to do the training strategy. But they have no line management responsibility, direct or indirect, for most of the trainers. What the trainers have is they choose the person they meet in one-to-ones, the person who challenges and supports them, the person who coaches them to set targets, the person who, we call them a coordinator, but would normally be called a manager. Yeah? And we find they make pretty good decisions about that. Now, the question that people always come up with, and you may be thinking it yourself now, is what happens to those that don't get chosen? Because people don't. Now, I always find that question interesting because people never ask about the misery that thousands or even millions of people go through under managers who really shouldn't be in charge of people. But the question is always, what happens to those poor managers who don't get chosen? And the answer is simple. They get to do something else. Yeah? I did have somebody say, oh, do they get disciplined? You know, it was someone in the prison service, so perhaps it explained it. No, maybe we apologize for putting them in a role that they weren't great at. But to explain how that works, let me tell you 3 stories. We worked with one company who had a marketing director, who I'll call Mary, who was brilliant at marketing, but lousy with people. She used to lose half a team every year. And the company came to us and said, we need to solve this. We need her marketing skills, but we need to do so. It's costing us a fortune, this staff turnover. Now, I'll tell you what we did, and you can compare it with what you did. It's fairly simple. We took the director, took her out of management role, so that she spent all the time doing marketing. We worked with the team and found out who they wanted to be their manager, who was good with people. Yeah? In your organizations, you could probably do it very easily. In most of the ones I work with, they think, great idea, but we couldn't possibly do it. But guess who was happiest with that solution? Mary, of course. She got to spend her time doing what she was great at, marketing, and none of the stuff that stressed her out. Or another example is a software company we've worked with in England called Cougar. At the end of a management away day, some of the managers came up to us slightly sheepishly and said, you know, we don't really do this management thing. We're going to go back and tell Clive, our managing director, we don't want to be managers anymore. So they went back, they told Clive. Clive was delighted. Because he'd been trying to work out how to tell these people that maybe this wasn't what they were best at. But they wanted to value their skills as much as others, so they came up with a clever system. They came up with a judo belt system for programmers. So you could become a green belt, a yellow belt, a blue belt, a brown belt, a black belt. And as you can probably imagine, the idea of being a black belt coder was perhaps as attractive, maybe a little bit more, than being a people manager to programmers. Yeah? And that's become very successful for them. Or let me take the example of Apple. You will all know that Apple was set up 35 years ago by Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. But you might not be aware of how hard Steve Jobs had to work to get Woz to join. Because he went to him and said, we can build an awesome company, and you can run a team of engineers. And Woz said, maybe I'll stay at HP. And Steve went back to him and said, look, you can have a huge team of engineers. You can have such responsibility. And Woz said, no, not for me. And then Mike Markula, the early investor, went to Steve Jobs and said, you have to understand that Woz is an engineer. And he doesn't really want to be in charge of people. And so Jobs went to Woz and said, okay, you can have great resources. You can have fantastic kit. You can be involved in key technical decisions. And I promise you, Woz, you will never have to manage anybody. Woz made the shift, and the rest is history. Now, how many of you have promotion routes that enable some people to be promoted for being a great manager, but others to be promoted for their technical skills and become very senior and highly paid without having to manage anybody? Hands up if you have that capability. Oh, only a few. Okay. Those two things are crucial to being able to choose your manager, be able to separate, in my view they are, being able to separate people management from strategy and having that alternative route. And if you enable people to choose their manager, I reckon you'll have a happier workforce. I reckon you'll have a more successful organization. I guarantee you will have a lower staff turnover. And it absolutely makes sense in terms of democratic workplaces. I'm Henry. I'm happy. I hope you are too. Thank you.